Learning how to retouch effectively inside of ON1 Photo RAW is really important for removing distractions and really directing your viewers' attention to the areas of the photo that you want them to pay attention to. Today, we're going to take a look at the healing brush, which is one of the many retouching tools, but there's a lot of capability and flexibility inside of the healing brush that I think you'll find of value or at least of interest. So let's go ahead and jump into ON1 and take a look. Here we are inside of ON1 Photo RAW, and we have a photo from Signature Edits. So if you want to download it, you can do so. Just check the description box. There will be a link. You will have to scroll through it, but that's okay. You can find the image. My real recommendation is that you use your own photo though, because that's how you're really going to learn what these tools can do with your images. Now, that being said, ON1 Photo RAW has a few different ways of getting to these tools that we're going to be using today, which is the healing brush. All right. The first way is you can come over to the left section here, or your left column, if you will, and you can select the third tool from the bottom, and you can see that that's the healing brush. Now, the keyboard shortcut, assuming you haven't changed your keyboard shortcuts, is the letter Q to pull up the tool that we're going to be using today. And I love using keyboard shortcuts, so that's what I'm going to do is hit the letter Q, and this brings me into the retouching workspace. Now, you'll notice that my right side has grayed out, and I now have an option bar up here at the top. Again, I use the letter Q, so I jump straight to the tool that we're going to be working with today. And it is a part of the other retouching tools, because this is like the retouching group, if you will. If you hit this little drop down arrow, you can see the other 4 tools that are part of the retouching group. We're not going to go over those today. And if you wanted to use the generative eraser for some of this stuff, you could, but this is me showing you how to do this outside of using the generative eraser. That being said, you have the tools that are available to you up here in the options. That's the first little oval that's in the dark gray section. The next area is the size of the brush. We're going to go over that a little bit later. Don't worry about it. I personally never come up here to change the size. The next option that we have available is the feather. And if I make my brush just a little bit larger here on the canvas, you can see I have 2 circles. I have an inner circle and an outer circle. The inner circle is the area that is going to get 100% of the healing effect. And then the outer circle is that feather that's kind of going to blend with the environment around it. It'll make sense when we start painting, but that's what I want you to be aware of. In most cases, whenever you're using the masking tools or things of that sort, you usually want your feather to be all the way up at 100%. Going to pull it all the way up, but look at what it does to that inner circle. It makes it extremely tiny. Depending on the size of your brush, it may not even be worthwhile, because you're not going to be able to really remove anything. It's just going to feather everything, and that doesn't look the best. If you want to remove something, you typically want to be able to select it and have it removed, and then feather the edges of that area that's being removed. My recommendation is to leave your feather somewhere between 50 and 70%. All right, so we'll leave it at 60 for today. And if I need to change that, then I can. The next one is opacity. I'm going to make this really easy. Leave it at 100. I've never found a reason to not have it at 100%. If you found a reason to change opacity, please let me know down in the comment section. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are, but for healing brush, I've never needed to change my opacity. It stays at 100. Then we have the mode, and the mode, you got 4 different options. I'm going to make this easy for you as well. There's really only 2 that you need to worry about. All right. The heal and the stamp. Now we're going to take a look at why both of those are the most useful, with heal being the most useful and stamp being the second most useful, or vice versa, depending on what you're trying to do. And then you have your overlay. I have it set to selected. I find that that's the best for my personal workflow. You can leave it on auto. It doesn't really affect the tool itself. It's really more of a visibility and preference thing. You'll see how this kind of works in action here in a bit, but don't worry about it. And then the last one is really, I think it's helpful if you want to manually remove or reduce dust in your images. But now that we have the AI tool that allows us to do that, you could just use that. But nonetheless, if you click these little glasses, it's going to add extreme contrast to the image. In this particular image, there is no dust. But if you did have a bunch of dust in the sky, or on your sensor, I should say, it'll pop out and it will be very, very noticeable. And then you can just go ahead and paint that away. This little gear icon is really for those of us who are using Wacom tablets. I personally don't use one whenever I work with ON1. If you are, then you'll know that having the pressure adjustable size, you can do so by checking this little circle. And as you're painting, it just makes your brush a little bit larger or smaller. But I use the bracket keys personally when I'm adjusting my brush, so I don't really care to have that. And then the last item here is a delete key. So if I were to paint this area right here and paint this area right here, so the last one that I have selected will be removed. And let me just paint one more area. So we'll paint down here. All right, so now I have 3 different selections on my canvas. If I want to remove the second one, because that just doesn't make sense, I can click it and then I can click the minus icon and it'll delete it. The way that I like to delete though is using my keyboard, because my hand is usually on my Toolbox Neo, which I'll leave linked down in the description box below. It's just a macro control, which I can map different keys to it. So my left hand, it really does orchestrate a lot of those moves. But if you are using a regular typing keyboard, what you can do is select the area that you want to delete and then just hit the backspace or delete key on your keyboard. And it does the exact same thing as this little minus icon up here. So we'll just go ahead and delete this one as well. And that brings us back to our beginning. So we'll go ahead and get started with editing inside of ON1 using the hilling brush. So I have hill selected and I am just going to resize my brush, and we're going to get rid of this little cover down here at the bottom, because I think that that's one of the things that's distracting me in this particular image, and I just want to make it go away. I'm going to hit Command and plus on my keyboard to zoom in a little bit. I think it's always worthwhile to zoom in whenever you're editing a photo like this and using the hilling brush. Holding the space bar down, I can click and drag to reposition my canvas. And now what I need to do is put my brush right over the area. I'm not clicking yet. And the reason why I like to do this is if you look at the inner circle, you can see I can essentially paint this smaller portion of the area that I want to get rid of. It covers up that whole area. I don't necessarily want that, because I want to make my transitions a little bit smoother and make sure that I'm selecting enough area that I want to delete, but also leaving a large enough gap for the transition. So what I'm going to do is make my brush just a bit smaller, and that way I'm getting on the inside of my area that I want to remove, but I'm also leaving a pretty good transition since I'm at 60% feather. Now, based off of the image you're working on, you'll need to reposition your feather. Again, depending, if you need more feather, then increase it. If you need less, then decrease it. But I'm just going to go ahead and start clicking and dragging around the outer area here. And what that's going to do is it's letting me select pretty much everything that I want to remove. But at the same time, it's also giving me a transition area. And then I'm just going to paint on the inside here to make sure that I'm 100% removing this distraction, this cover in the street. Nonetheless, I'm still holding down my mouse button, and that's important because as soon as I let go, ON1 is going to calculate and it's going to go and grab some different pixels and try to heal that area with those pixels. Now I get these little indicators. I have a green one, which is ON1 telling me, hey, I'm sampling this area to put into the area where the red indicator is. If I click and drag this green area, you'll see I get a live update. Now, because I want this to look like street, all I need to do is pull this around until I get a pretty good sampled area like so. Now, the challenge with the hill brush is it's trying to blend the contrast, and sometimes you lose texture. Now, for this particular image and in the street, I'm not overly concerned about it. I think that it's working just fine, so I'm going to leave that alone. But what I always like to do is zoom out. So I'm going to hit Command and 0 on my keyboard. That brings me all the way out, and I'm looking at the area that I just retouched. If I can't tell that I retouched the area, then I know that it did a good job. If I can tell that I retouched the area, then I can tell that I did a bad job, and I may need to go back and rework that. Now, some of you may be wondering, well, Chris, where did your overlays go? Well, if you notice, I have my mouse on the far right side of the screen over here in my develop module area. If I bring my mouse back onto the canvas workspace, then I get my overlays. They pop up again. This is a great way of working. I like to be able to just look at the image after I've made my edits to verify if I even like what I did. All right. If you leave your mouse on here and you're looking at all these overlays, to me, that's just distracting. I don't like it. It's not my favorite. So I prefer just to move my mouse over, get rid of them, take a look at it. If you're finding value in this video, go ahead and smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. So that way you can get more content just like this. If you want to pick up ON1 Photo RAW or maybe an upgrade to ON1, consider using my coupon code FreeWolfPhotos20. It'll save you some money at checkout, and I'll make a small commission, but that's at no extra charge to you. I greatly appreciate everyone who uses it. Now let's jump back into today's video. So we're going to zoom in over here on the little lamppost. So I'm going to hit Command and plus, hold down my spacebar key, click and drag to reposition my canvas. And I think that that looks good right there. I just like to work in the center of the screen. You let me know where you like to work down in the comment section below. Now with this, what I want to do is maybe even zoom in a little bit more because this is a smaller area. I don't want to get like all the way down to the pixels. I'm starting to see the pixels here, but I don't want to get that far. I just want to zoom in just a bit and resizing my brush, which you can do so by using the left and right bracket keys. I don't know if I explained that earlier, but using the left and right bracket keys, you can make your brush size larger or smaller. I recommend doing this when you are working on a canvas like this because you get to see the size of the brush relative to the thing that you're trying to remove. If you are over here at the top resizing your brush, you don't know if that's large enough or small enough for the area you're trying to remove or work with. And you know, that works with masking as well. So food for thought. All right. With that being said, I'm going to make my brush just a little bit larger. Again, the inner circle is going to remove everything. The outer circle is going to get that feather. So what I want to do is probably be just about there. And I'm just going to drag up. And yes, I'm removing a portion of the pole. And then I'm just going to click and drag all the way around here until I get to the bottom. And then I'm going to connect the dots there. And then I just want to fill in the center. All right. Now, I got a square. It's a pretty good selection. I think it'll be all right. I'm going to let go. ON1 is calculated and it sampled over here to the left. For some reason, ON1 likes to sample to the left of the area you select. Don't know why, but I'm going to click and drag this green box until I get over here to the pole. And now I am resampling. I'm just going to try and size up the pole here line up the pole with the selection that I just selected, let go. And that looks okay. Got to get rid of this overlay. There we go. That looks okay. You can tell that it's not perfect, but we are also zoomed in at 400%. If we go back to fit, if I hit Command and 0, you could barely tell. All right. I'm not going to like sweat that. I think the healing brush worked well for getting that corrected the way that I want it to be. And, you know, this works great, especially for those who may not be able to use the AI tools, the generative erase tools, because your computer just isn't meeting the requirements or whatever the case may be. This is a great way of removing some of those areas. All right. So what we're going to do is get rid of this camera up here. Let's zoom back in. And now we have the camera in a position where I can start working with it. And I'm going to do the same thing. Mind you, I'm still on hill, and I'm just going to paint over the camera here. Now, notice that the camera is of different contrast than the background that I want to replace it with, because I do want to replace it with more of the sky. And I am going to work with this in two different parts because there's some wires underneath the street lamp here that I want to get rid of as well, but I need to get rid of the top part first, or at least that's where I plan to start. So I'm just going to go ahead and let go of my mouse, see what ON1 wants to come up with, and this is what it gives me. Now, I want to replace this with the sky. So I'm going to grab my little green box and try and find some sky. But you can see no matter where I move this, it's just trying to blend the sky into this high contrasted area. And that's something you want to be aware of when you're using the tool. Healing tool works great if you're trying to blend like contrasted areas. But if they are opposite contrasted areas, meaning this camera, if I just go ahead and pull this up, this camera is darker than the sky. So if I'm trying to replace it with the sky, it's just not going to work. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the delete key, get rid of that. And this is where stamp comes into play. And so I'm going to come up here to mode, click on stamp, and I'm going to paint over this area again, just like I did in the previous example, and select this whole area. So now that I have that selected, it's going to give me my sample space. Now, the difference between hill and stamp is stamp does not care about trying to blend contrasted areas. Instead, it's just going and grabbing pixels from another space and dropping them in there. And already I'm getting a better result. Now, if I leave it right here, you can see that just doesn't quite look right. It looks patchy. And you'll probably be like, well, see, Chris, that's what I was saying. The healing brush doesn't work. Well, the problem is you need to move this around into an area that is similar to the pixels that is around where that camera is. So I need a brighter sample area. So I'm just going to move this around until it starts to match. And look at that. I found a matching location. You could barely tell that there are any, that I even replaced this. All right. If you can see that, then you got like some eagle eyes, and that is awesome. But I can't tell, and I think it looks great. So now it's time to work on the bottom section, again, using the stamp tool. So I'm going to bring my brush over here, and I'll make it just a little bit smaller because I'm working with these wires, and I'm going to start right at the edge of the wire, paint the bottom wire first. And then there's also like this little, I don't know what it is. We'll call it a platform where maybe the camera was mounted to. I want to get rid of that. So I'm going to paint over it as well, and then connect it back to the area where I started. Make sure I get the inter portion or the inside portion of the part that I just painted. Let go of my mouse, and look at that. I've painted away that area, and I think it did a great job. Now, it is sampling a part of the lamp here and putting it into the pole. If I wanted to reposition that, I could just pull this out, but it makes the pole look a little skinny and it's unnatural. So I'm just going to pull that back up and let the lamp kind of fill in the blanks there. All right. Now I'm going to show you a power tip, and this is a secret across ON1 that if you don't know, the Option or the Alt key unlocks things that are hidden inside of ON1. And inside of the healing brush specifically is a transform tool. If I hold down the Option key, you can see I get these bounding boxes. And what's really cool about these bounding boxes is I can essentially manipulate my selection. So let's say I need to drag this over to the right a little bit, so that way it matches up better with this little gap in the pole. I can just pull that out and maybe even rotate it. So I'll just come right outside of the bounding box, and you can see I get this rotation icon, and I can click and drag to rotate this, and I can make this make as much sense as I need for my edit. And now if I let go of the Option key, I now have a pretty good edit for this pole retouching. Like, knowing that keyboard shortcut, Option or Alt, when you are making your retouches, makes you probably one of the most lethal retouchers inside of ON1, because a lot of people don't know that that exists. That's a game changer. Let's go ahead and hit Command and 0, zoom out. And I think that that's overall a really good edit. So let's take a look at the before and after, because you're probably wondering, like, yeah, I think that it looks good, but I don't remember what the distractions look like. So how can I go back and take a look at that? Well, let's go ahead and hit the blue check mark. This is going to commit those changes from the retouching collection tools to your image, but it's all still non-destructive. So if you're wondering, like, Chris, did I just destroy my image by doing this? The answer is no, you did not. What we're going to do is come up here to our layers section. All right. If it's hidden, just go ahead and click on the word layers to expand that. And I'm going to minimize this because I have mine exposed, but I'm going to show you how to get to that retouching option. You're going to come to the layer. Likely you only have one layer inside of your pane, but the layer where you just made all of those edits, those retouches to, you're going to hover over it. And to the far right, there's this little chevron pointing to the right side of your screen. If you click that, it's going to point down, and then it's going to expand your options. And this is essentially the history of like everything that you've done to the image so far. Because all the retouching tools, remember, there's 5 total. Because of all of those being grouped together, if you used any other retouching tool, when you turn this little radial button on or off, you're going to turn on or off all of those tools. To take a look at this, all I'm going to do is turn off the retouching, and you'll see all the distractions come back, and then I'll turn it back on and you'll see all of the distractions go away. So that's a way of being able to see over the entire image. Today, I only covered 2 of the tools that you can use inside of the healing retouching brush. The other 2, not so important for the overall edit. 9 times out of 10, I'm only using heal or stamp, which is why I only kept the video focusing on those 2 items. Now, if you want to learn more about using ON1, perhaps using copy and move, consider signing up for a coaching call with me down in the description box below, and I'll help answer your questions. If you want to keep learning here on YouTube, watch the video that's popping up on screen now. And until next time, I want you to stay inspired and keep creating. Peace.